Chapter 81. I've accepted another mission with good rewards, but I'll kill the you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 81. I've accepted another mission with good rewards, but I'll kill the believers of the fire god first. Mike sent a private message to the world's greatest sword hero and told him to play by himself first. After that, Mike set off for Victory City. Although the legend of the hero's mission priority was always higher than anything else, Mike still decided to do the mission that Death God had given him first. It was for nothing else but his divine sense. After all, the legend of the hero's mission was not a small deal. It was even possible for him to encounter a god. When he met a god, the existence of his divine sense would put him in two entirely different situations. If he did not have divine sense, then he would fall into a passive state. To put it bluntly, he could only obey God and do as he was instructed. Otherwise, he should just get lost and do a different mission. However, with his divine sense, Mike could launch an attack on God. This was the only way to maintain the basic fairness. Of course, this fairness was all talk. In the past, God never paid attention when it came to fairness to humans. Now, Mike had the strength to kill God. Hence, he would not be bothered to be fair to God. God will do as I say. If he doesn't, I will kill him. This is how one should enjoy the game. Victory City was actually quite far from Hero City, but it was very close to the City of Light. This was often complained about by players. Normal players would start from the City of Light, then go to Hero City, and then straight to Victory City. Hence, the location of this city was inconvenient. However, Second World was too realistic and did not have an official website. Hence, no matter how many players complained about it, it was useless. They could only accept it. Now, this originally inconvenient place was convenient for Mike. As he started from the City of Light, along with the buff from Swift Steps, he quickly reached Victory City. The most frequently used gate of Victory City was the North Gate. However, Mike entered from the East Gate because the City of Light was on the east side of Victory City. After entering Victory City, Mike subconsciously glanced at the notice board at the East Gate. Although Mike already had a mission, if he saw a suitable mission on the notice board, he would still immediately accept it. As a player, this was his habit. It did not matter if he did not check out the board. Once he checked, Mike actually found a pretty good mission. Cult extermination. Recently, many people were caught in Victory City due to their suspicious behavior. After investigation and interrogation, these residents seem to have joined a cult. This matter has already affected the order of Victory City. Hopefully, someone can find the base of the cult and exterminate the cult. Hint. You can obtain some clues by looking for the City Lord's butler. Mission requirement. Completely exterminate the cult. Mission level 30, reward. Baron of Victory City. After he saw this reward, Mike accepted it without hesitation. Although he had no idea how to complete this mission, he still accepted it. The reason was simple, the reward was simply too tempting. Having a title and not having a title would lead to two completely different ways of playing. With a title, one could buy real estate and buy a shop in Victory City. One had to know that potions were items needed by players. Even if the potion sold in the shop was 1 copper coin cheaper than shops owned by NPCs, many players would immediately become loyal customers. Such a way of earning money was extremely terrifying. It could be said that as long as he obtained the title as a baron, Mike would no longer have to worry about gold coins in the future. At least he would not have to go around robbing people like today. Oh, rather than going around to rob people, it was more like people came over to be robbed by him. This was not important. In short, Mike decided to accept the mission. After accepting the mission, Mike immediately went to look for the butler. The reason was very simple. After tearing down the notice, he had to start the mission within a certain period of time. If there was no progress, the mission would reappear on the notice board after a period of time. At that time, the mission might be picked up by someone else. Therefore, Mike had to talk to the butler first and secure the mission. The butler of Victory City was almost the most special NPC in the human cities. Because he was a dwarf. It was normal to see players of other races in the human cities, but it was rare to see NPCs of other races. Because of this, Mike had a deep impression of him, so he found him very quickly. "Hello, I have accepted the mission, Cult Elimination, on the notice board. I want to ask you for some clues." The dwarf butler stroked his beard and said coldly, "I am very busy now. Come and find me tomorrow." After saying that, he left on his own. Mike was slightly stunned when he heard this answer, but he soon realized what was going on. This butler was a dwarf and not a human, so Mike's human affinity skill had no effect on this butler. Ever since he started playing Second World again, it was his first time being treated indifferently by an NPC. However, it was also good. Mike was just here to talk anyway. Now that the Cult Extermination character had appeared in Mike's quest panel, he could ignore it for the time being. He could do it again when he had time. Now, he had to go kill the believers of the God of Fire. He arrived at the Temple of the God of Fire with ease. As expected, when the followers of the Temple of the God of Fire saw Mike, they immediately shouted and charged over. This time, Mike had learned his lesson. He switched the sword of Meredith in his hand into the umbrella form and stood still. Following this, a very spectacular scene appeared in Victory City. Countless spells, arrows, and bullets were fired at a player, but the player just stood there without moving. In addition, a large number of melee NPCs charged at Mike, launching melee attacks. Mike also did not move. However, after a round of attacks, the NPCs with physical attacks all died on the spot. The ground was covered with corpses. As for Mike, he just stood there and let them attack, block and rebound. That was all. When all the physical classes of the believers died, Mike finally took the initiative to attack. After all, magic attacks could not be blocked, nor could they be rebounded. So, Mike had to do it himself. Naturally, since it was these NPCs who took the initiative to attack, Mike would not increase his bounty if he acted now. 3 minutes later, the Temple of the God of Fire in Victory City regained its peace. After Mike turned and left, the streets inside and outside the Temple of the God of Fire were covered with corpses. Invincible. Chapter 82. A troublesome mission. Why was Tiffany never at Dying Mill? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 82. A troublesome mission. Why was Tiffany never at Dying Mill? Although the Temple of the God of Fire in this city had been destroyed, Mike was not in a hurry to leave. He still remembered the lover mission that had yet to be completed. Since he was already in Victory City, it would have been a waste of opportunity if he did not carry out the mission. It was not Mike's character to not do a mission. After arriving at the Dying Mill with ease, Mike asked with a smile, "Hello, may I know if Ms. Tiffany is here?" As soon as he said that, footsteps came from upstairs. Mike instantly felt relaxed. He was finally going to complete this mission. As someone who had an obsessive-compulsive disorder, once he accepted a mission, he must complete it. Although it may be delayed at times, he would never miss out on an opportunity to complete the mission. However, just as he was looking at the stairs happily, his eyes froze. He actually saw a pair of legs covered in leg hair. What the F***ck? What happened to Lady Tiffany? Why does she have legs similar to a burly man? The village chief's taste in women is too F***king weird. When the pair of legs covered in leg hair walked down the stairs, Mike's mood became heavy. The owner of this dying mill was actually a young man. Because Victory City was not as popular as the City of Light, many players did not know much about Victory City even if they were level 100. Therefore, it was normal for Mike not to know about the situation of the dying mill. After the NPC walked down with a cigarette in his mouth, he looked at Mike with confusion and asked, "You are Lord God Slayer. May I ask why you are looking for my grandmother? Mike was completely stunned. Bino Eldem, grandmother. Grandmother again. Is Lady Tiffany that powerful? The corners of his eyes twitched twice, and he could not help but ask, do you know Evelyn? The confusion on the man's face became more severe. He frowned and nodded, yes, that's my sister. What's wrong? Mike heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, these two people had the same father. If he and Evelyn were half-siblings, then Lady Tiffany was really too flirtatious. Facing the man's doubts, Mike finally got back to the main topic. It's like this. I was asked by someone to deliver a letter to Lady Tiffany. Since she's not here, I'll just give it to you. Please pass it on. Mike wanted to finish the mission quickly. After all, he had already received the reward in advance. Mike no longer had any expectations for this mission. However, the man took a puff of his cigarette and said calmly, I'm sorry, Lord God Slayer. I'm afraid I can't do this. Because my grandmother passed away last year. Hearing this, Mike was completely dumbfounded. What does he mean? Does it mean that this mission can't be completed? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. There was no mission that could not be completed in Second World. There must be some mistake. Mike's brows were tightly knitted, and not a word left his mouth. The man glanced at Mike and said, anyway, it's a letter for my grandmother. It's not appropriate for me to accept it on behalf of her. I'll just trouble you to make a trip and put this letter next to my grandmother's grave. In the next moment, Mike's mission progress changed. Lover, head to the cemetery in the north of Victory City. Mike sighed. Why was this mission so troublesome? However, he had finally made it this far. It was not like Mike to give up so easily. Alright, then I'll make another trip. Mike shook his head helplessly. The man bowed slightly. Thank you, then I'll have to trouble you. Walking out of the dying workshop, Mike rubbed his swollen temples and sorted out his thoughts. He was now level 32. He had leveled up when he brought the world's greatest sword hero to clear dungeons. The number of missions he had on his plate was rather large. Lover. Missing princess. Kill all the believers of Fire God. Cult extermination. Moreover, the most important mission, the legend of the hero. Looking at the forever increasing number of missions, Mike sighed. There was no other way. He had to hurry up and complete some missions. Otherwise, he would only accumulate more and more. As for what mission to do first. Although the legend of the hero had the highest priority, it would definitely be placed after kill all the believers of Fire God. Mike had a very strong premonition that his divine sense would definitely be of great help to Mike in completing the legend of the hero mission. As for the other two missions. For the time being, he had no clues for the missing princess, so he chose to temporarily neglect it. He also did not have any clues for cult extermination. If he wanted to get any leads, he would have to wait until the next day to look for the butler. Meanwhile, the temple of the god of fire in Victory City had been cleared. Since that was the case, he would do the lover mission first. After completing it, he would quickly level up to level 40. After that, he could go to the other races' main cities to do the kill all the believers of Fire God mission. After sorting out his thoughts, Mike left Victory City and headed toward the Victory City Cemetery. It had to be said that there was a huge difference in the styles of the human race's main cities. City of Light always gave people a very prosperous feeling. After all, it was a city that was directly ruled by the king system. Meanwhile, Hero City always gave off a gloomy feeling. Oh, that was not right. Ever since Mike completed the first mission of the Legend of the Hero, Hero City had become festive. As for Victory City, this city was a little special. After all, this was a city that was close to the borders of other races. There had been a few wars in the past. Hence, Victory City looked a little depressed and dilapidated. The atmosphere did not fit the name of the city. It was not just the buildings in the city. Even the environment outside the city was the same. The trees outside the city were mostly leafless bald trees. Even if some of the trees had leaves, only a few leaves were present. In fact, most of them were yellow. Whoever came here would feel dispirited. Hence, players did not like to remain here for too long. This was also one of the reasons why players were not familiar with Victory City. This time, Mike deliberately slowed down his pace, enjoying the quiet environment as he walked toward the cemetery. Too many things had happened to Mike over the past 2 days. It was rare to have such a calming environment. So Mike was a little relaxed at the moment. However, when he walked into the cemetery, his expression turned strange. Because he saw a woman. A woman who should not appear in Second World. Tiffany. Chapter 83. Unexpected Harvest. Tiffany was actually related to the cult. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 83. Unexpected Harvest. Tiffany was actually related to the cult. After seeing the ID of the old woman in front of him, Mike was shocked. What's going on? Isn't she dead? Why is she here? Mike hesitated for a moment, but he eventually took a step forward and asked tentatively, "Excuse me. Are you Ms. Tiffany from the dyeing mill?" The old woman looked at Mike with a blank look in her eyes and nodded slightly. This reaction made Mike feel even more uncomfortable. This Tiffany in front of him did not look like a living person at all. Instead, she looked more like a walking corpse. What made it even creepier was that the man from the dyeing mill said that Tiffany was already dead. However, Tiffany had appeared in front of Mike. Although this was a game, it was not an ordinary game. Every NPC in Second World was a living being. They would not reappear after they died. That was why the price of killing NPCs was so high. Hence, the scene of Tiffany appearing here made Mike feel extremely uncomfortable. Mike only had one thought, and that was to leave this place as soon as possible. He quickly took out the letter and handed it to Tiffany. "This is a letter from the novice village chief's father to you." Mike looked at Tiffany with a solemn expression. If it was possible, he really wanted to put this letter directly next to the tombstone and finish the mission as soon as possible. Unfortunately, since the real Tiffany was here, it was useless to just put the letter next to the tombstone. Moreover, the previous mission was very vague. "Please go to the cemetery in the north of Victory City," the character introduction said so. It did not say, "Please put the letter next to Tiffany's grave." Therefore, the mission could only be done by giving the letter to her. Mike only hoped that Tiffany would quickly take the letter and then he could leave this damned place. Under Mike's nervous gaze, Tiffany slowly raised her hand and took the letter. Mission completed. Mike heaved a sigh of relief and immediately lifted his foot to leave. Who knew that as soon as he turned around, he heard Tiffany say, "Young man, do you want to obtain a special power?" After hearing that, Mike stopped and turned his head around in confusion. Tiffany no longer had a pair of lifeless eyes. This time, Tiffany's face had revealed a wicked smile. However, Mike did not feel flustered now. Because he discovered something. This Tiffany seemed to be related to the cult of Victory City. There was a reason why Mike thought so. First of all, if Tiffany was human, then the man of the dying house was obviously lying. It was possible. However, Mike figured that the man was not lying. Because the words Tiffany used just now were very odd. She actually called Mike young man. Mike had his human affinity skill, and he also received a God-tier passive enhancement. Under such circumstances, any human NPC would essentially have great respect for Mike. The novice village chief was the best proof. However, Tiffany did not call Mike respected Lord God Slayer. This was enough to prove that the current Tiffany was not a human. At least not a normal human. Judging from Tiffany's resurrection and what she said just now, Tiffany was very likely related to the cult. Do you still remember the mission description of cult extermination? There seemed to be a cult in Victory City that was causing a bad influence. If that was the case, why didn't the king send someone to settle this matter? This was illogical. Previously in the City of Light, Mike had the opportunity to do the wheat field protection quest because a few powerful mages in the City of Light had been sent to the territories of other races to carry out tasks. Otherwise, any fire mage NPC could easily burn all the locusts. It would not have ended up being Mike's job. In conclusion, judging by the fact that the cult had yet to be exterminated and players' help were needed, it meant that the city lords of Victory City were really helpless about the cult. They were too well hidden. After connecting all of these dots, Mike finally discovered the truth of this matter. The cult used some method to revive the dead NPCs, and then these NPCs helped them recruit new believers to join the cult. It was just a resurrected dead person. Even if they were captured by the guards of Victory City, they would definitely not reveal the location of the cult's base camp. Thinking of this, Mike narrowed his eyes and revealed a smile. After all, he was a 30-year-old veteran gamer. Although his combat ability was not good in his previous life, he had done many missions. He would definitely be the first to notice if there was a problem with any mission or if any mission looked odd. Originally, he wanted to leave this place and stop dealing with Tiffany. However, since Tiffany was related to the cult, he could take this opportunity to complete the mission. In other words, this was an opportunity. If Mike chose to leave, he might have to look for the dwarf butler who had a bad attitude the next time he wanted to do this mission. At that time, it was uncertain as to whether he could get any clues or whether the clues would be useful. In that case, he might as well do it now. He immediately replied, "Do you have any way to give me a special power?" Tiffany laughed sinisterly and said, "You'll know if you come with me." Then, she turned around and left. Looking at Tiffany's back, Mike was even more certain. This old woman was definitely related to a cult. "I'm a member of a cult" was clearly written on her face. Without any hesitation, he immediately followed Tiffany's footsteps. Tiffany did not take Mike out of the cemetery. On the contrary, she walked deeper into the cemetery. Mike looked around as well. Unfortunately, he did not see any suspicious people. After walking for a while, Tiffany stopped in front of a tombstone. Mike looked at the tombstone and frowned slightly. This was not Tiffany's tombstone. In other words, it was not anyone's tombstone at all. There was no inscription on the tombstone. It was completely blank. Such a tombstone was indeed strange, but no one would notice it. In the next moment, Tiffany reached out and gently knocked on the tombstone twice. Then, the floor in front of the tombstone suddenly sank down and turned into a staircase. Tiffany turned around and looked at Mike with a cold smile. "Young man, do you want to come in with me?" Chapter 84. One mission with two choices: should I join a cult? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 84. One mission with two choices: should I join a cult? Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Mike narrowed his eyes and thought to himself, no wonder Victory City can't deal with this cult. The base of this cult is located in a cemetery. Only a ghost can find it. This made Mike a little more interested. He suddenly became curious. Who was the leader of this cult? Using a corpse to attract new people into the cult, and the base was set up in such a secluded place. This kind of person was definitely not an ordinary person. He smiled slightly and nodded, "Lead the way." The old woman Tiffany laughed sinisterly and directly walked into the stairs. Mike took the initiative to follow. When the two of them entered the stairs near the entrance rose again, returning to the original appearance. The cemetery regained its silence as if nothing had happened. Underground. After walking for a while, the two of them finally came to a passage. It was no longer a downward staircase, but a forward path. The old woman laughed sinisterly and snapped her fingers. Suddenly, flames suddenly lit up on both sides of the passage. Rows of green lights flickered. The old woman looked back at Mike and walked on without saying anything. This trick was nothing to Mike. She did it to make him nervous. After all, the environment looked scary. She also wanted to show Mike her power. It had to be said, this ability looked very strange. It was the first time that Mike saw such a skill that could turn on lights with a snap of the fingers. Of course, this was not attractive to Mike at all. This skill was only pretentious and had no practical use. Mike continued following the old woman. After a short walk, the two of them came to a roof with a dome-shaped roof. Mike looked up and saw that the height of the walls was about 10 meters. What was more surprising was that this hemispherical space did not have any supporting pillars. Was this cult not afraid of landslides? Young man, we're here. After the old woman said this, she turned around and left. Mike did not say anything. He knew from the beginning that Tiffany was just a guide. After bringing Mike here, her mission was completed. Thinking of this, an idea came to Mike's mind. If he did not receive this mission on the bulletin board of Victory City, but immediately came to carry out the lover mission, could he join this cult? No, no. Mike frowned slightly. Not if. It was now. Mike seemed to be able to join the cult as well. However, if he joined, he might not be able to complete the mission. Therefore, Mike could consider not attacking these people for the time being. If the benefits were great, it would be acceptable if he could not complete the Victory City mission. The Baron title could be obtained in the future. However, special skills would not come by as easily. Mike suddenly felt a sense of relief. If the butler of Victory City was not a dwarf, but a human, he might have enthusiastically told Mike the clues. If that happened, Mike would not have encountered Tiffany. Instead, he would directly come and destroy the cult as an intruder. Mike could not help but sigh again. Second World had too much variability. The same mission could be triggered in two different ways and would lead to two totally different outcomes. It was rare for Mike to connect with both sides at the same time. As he was thinking, a figure walked out of a tunnel in front of him. This person wore a robe and a wide hood, perfectly hiding his body. He slowly walked up to Mike and sized him up. Then, he said in a hoarse voice, "What a powerful soul. Not bad." Mike smiled and nodded, "I'll take that as a compliment." The black-robed man did not answer but walked around Mike. Then, he teased, "It's been a long time since I've seen an adventurer like you. Your soul is very strong, but you're not wearing any valuable equipment. Dilvico, I've walked into a blind spot out of your field of vision, but you don't feel nervous at all. You are even considered to be completely unguarded. An adventurer like you won't be able to live for long." The NPCs of Second World knew that adventurers, in other words, players, could not die. The black-robed man's words were just a tactic to lower Mike's position so that he could take the initiative in the conversation. Mike did not comment on his words. He just smiled slightly. Not wearing any equipment was to lower his defense, so that the damage caused by rebound would be higher. As for defense, did Mike need it? The answer was no. Even if Mike laid down to sleep now, he would automatically block when an attack was directed at him. He would never be hurt. The black-robed man seemed to be unaware of Mike's thoughts. Instead, he said to himself, "Do you want to join our evil god cult? As long as you are willing to join, the great evil god will grant you strength." A blue dialogue box appeared in front of Mike. "Would you like to join the evil god cult?" Mike did not give an immediate answer. Instead, he asked, "Oh. Then what kind of power will the great evil god give me?" Facing Mike's question, the black-robed man did not show any displeasure. Instead, he laughed loudly. His hoarse laughter sounded particularly unpleasant. After laughing for a while, he said with great satisfaction, "An adventurer who will only be sold for benefits. Interesting. Your greed will affect many of your judgments, but Lord Evil God likes greedy people the most. Because Lord Evil God can satisfy your greed." He paused and continued, "If you join our Evil God cult, you can obtain the power bestowed by Evil God. However, trainee members can only obtain the most insignificant skill." In the next moment, the black-robed man waved his hand. Black gas immediately surrounded Mike. Mike narrowed his eyes and looked at the skill pane. Sure enough, there was an additional skill. Phantom Clone. A clone that will be controlled by the host's own will can be created, but the clone will have limited independent movements. Moreover, the clone will take away half of the original body's attributes. After the clone dies, the attributes would return to the original body. After Mike saw this skill, he frowned slightly. Active skill. It was not what Mike wanted. If he used law to change this skill into a passive skill, Mike was still uncertain as to what kind of skill it would become. Regardless, this skill was indeed worth acquiring. After all, any second world skill related to clones could only be created as an illusion. None of them had any combat ability. Mike fell into deep thought, while the black-robed man urged him with full confidence, "How about it? Do you want to join the Evil God cult?" Chapter 85. The mission of the Evil God cult, participating in the City of Lights. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 85. The mission of the Evil God cult, participating in the City of Lights tournament. Facing the black-robed man's question, Mike still did not immediately answer. Instead, he raised another question. This power definitely has a limit, right? What price do I have to pay to join the Evil God cult? The black-robed man laughed sinisterly and slowly said, "Not bad, you're a smart soul. I admire you very much. There are many greedy people in the world. However, there aren't many souls like you who are both greedy and cautious." Facing the black-robed man's praise, Mike's heart did not waver and he continued to ask. "You still haven't told me the price I have to pay." The black-robed man laughed sinisterly and said in a low voice, "To tell you the truth, Lord Evil God's current situation isn't very optimistic." The black-robed man used a subtle word, but it did not bother Mike. It was most likely that he had fought with a god and was seriously injured and needed nourishment. The black-robed man continued, "Lord Evil God won't attack his followers, so you don't actually have any price to pay. But, the souls of the creatures you kill will be taken away by Lord Evil God as nutrients for him. This isn't bad for you, is it?" Mike narrowed his eyes again. He needed to confirm one last question. "Then does it mean that the monsters I kill won't yield any loot?" Mike knew that NPCs understood the equipment dropped monsters that were killed by players as loot. He originally thought that joining the Evil God cult would result in no loot even when he killed monsters in the future. Mike could not accept this. Killing monsters and looting equipment were some of the important sources of income for players. Of course, he could not accept it. However, to his surprise, the black-robed man's answer was no. "No, no, no. Of course, you can continue to obtain your spoils of war. Lord Evil God doesn't need the cheap equipment. He only wants souls." He. This low laugh felt very evil, but it sounded like a heavenly voice to Mike. To Mike, this was no different from not paying any price at all. Of course, he chose to accept such a good thing. "In that case, I'll join." The dialog box disappeared, and Mike chose yes. In the next moment, a line of words appeared in Mike's profile. "Member of the Evil God cult." The black-robed man smiled in satisfaction, "Welcome to the Evil God cult. If you want to raise your status in the Evil God cult, you can come here to find me at any time. I'll give you some missions." Of course, the higher your status is, the stronger the ability given to you by Lord Evil God will be. Mike nodded slightly but did not answer immediately. He secretly glanced at his mission panel. What surprised him was that the mission to destroy the evil god cult was still there. In other words, he could find a chance to fall out and destroy the evil god cult and obtain the title as a baron. However, now was not the time. He still wanted to see what new abilities he could get after raising his status in the evil god cult. He smiled slightly and said, "Then, is there anything you need me to do for you?" The black-robed man was very satisfied with Mike's attitude. "Very good, as expected of a greedy soul. You're willing to work hard to satisfy your greed. Now, you need to go and extract nutrients for Lord Evil God, killing 100 creatures will do. This small matter shouldn't be difficult for you. As long as you listen, Lord Evil God will satisfy your greed." An additional item appeared in Mike's quest panel. Evil God's nutrients. Kill 100 creatures. Mission reward. 20 contribution points. Generally, it required 100 contribution points to level up in a cult. In other words, Mike only needed to do 5 of such missions to obtain a new ability. This was very easy for Mike. "Okay, I'll go now." After leaving this sentence, Mike turned around and left. Of course, he would not specifically go and kill monsters. Since he could complete this evil god cult's mission while doing other missions, why would he go out of his way to kill monsters? There was no need for that. This was a player's train of thought. After leaving the underground room, Mike stepped into the tunnel and climbed up the stairs. Just as he was about to reach the ground, the floor automatically sank and turned into the stairs. This was quite convenient for the player. After walking out of the tunnel, the stairs rose up again and returned to the original floor appearance. Mike could not help but nod slightly. This was indeed a good design. At least Mike would not have to worry about the evil god cult being wiped out by the NPCs before he could even obtain more abilities. After wiping away this layer of worry, Mike thought for a moment and decided to find another quest to accept. That was right, Mike had no other quests to do. The love quest had been completed now. There were no clues for the missing princess mission at the moment. He needed to reach level 40 before he could go to other races' territories and proceed with the Kill All the Believers of Fire God mission. As for the Legend of the Hero mission, it was best to do it after obtaining Divine Sense. In other words, now that Mike had nothing to do, he could only do the Evil God Cult's mission. However, it was a bit of a loss to just do this one mission. It was most reasonable to do 2 missions simultaneously. After thinking for a while, Mike walked to the east gate of Victory City. He wanted to see if there were other good missions on the bulletin board. After arriving at Victory City, Mike walked directly to the bulletin board. Victory City was still very quiet. Not a single player was here, so there was no need to pay attention to anything else. When he came to the notice board, Mike wanted to take a look at the mission, but he saw a very eye-catching notice. The martial arts competition in the City of Light. The king held a martial arts competition in the City of Light. Only adventurers are allowed to participate. The first place in the martial arts competition will receive a weapon from the king. The second place will receive a skill book. The third and fourth place will receive gold coins as a reward. All adventurers are welcome to participate. After seeing this notice, Mike was slightly stunned. The king's daughter had gone missing, yet he was still in the mood to hold a tournament. Mike could not help but feel sorry for the princess. Of course, 1 second later, Mike walked out of his sad mood. The missing princess matter was not important. What was important was that with Mike's strength, he would definitely not have any problem with getting the first place. However, Mike's goal was not first place, but second place. He wanted that skill book. After all, a weapon would not necessarily have special skills. It might just be a weapon with good stats. However, a skill book could definitely bring Mike some benefits. Even if it was not a passive skill, Mike could use law to modify it into a passive skill. In that case, let's go to the tournament. Chapter 86. Successfully registered for the tournament, a familiar face, sky-splitting sword. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 86. Successfully registered for the tournament, a familiar face, sky-splitting sword. Mike, who had swift steps, quickly arrived at Hero City. The main difference between Victory City, Hero City, and the City of Light was that the City of Light was crowded with people. There were King players everywhere. Many players had already reached level 20, but they were not in a hurry to go to Hero City because they wanted to find reliable teammates in the City of Light. With teammates, it would be convenient for them to complete missions in Hero City. This was already considered a tradition of Second World. The reason for this tradition was actually very simple. It was because of the priest players. With the priest players' abilities, they were not strong enough to go to the parts of Second World where there were monsters everywhere. If they did not have any teammates, it would be difficult for them to travel from the City of Light to Hero City. Moreover, a priest was an essential member of a team. Hence, everyone was accustomed to departing together after they had found teammates in the City of Light. After arriving at the City of Light, Mike glanced at the notice board. The notice board in Victory City only said that the tournament would be held in the City of Light. However, the details on the notice board of the City of Light were even clearer. The registration for the tournament was at the arena. Mike did not waste any time and immediately headed to the arena. After all, the tournament was very likely to have a limit on the number of participants. If he was late, there might not be any spots. After arriving at the arena, Mike's heart skipped a beat. If the streets of the City of Light were filled with people, then the arena was completely packed with people. Almost every gap available was filled in by a player. Looking at the scene in front of him, Mike had the urge to take out his weapon and chop them all to death. However, he held it in. He had just paid a large sum of gold coins to eliminate the bounty. He did not want to go around robbing people again. How should he put it? Originally, Mike thought that robbing money was an enjoyable thing, but when these guys took the initiative to be robbed by him, the pleasure plummeted. This feeling was as if you were walking down the stairs and there was a beautiful woman in a short skirt before you. Her skirt fluttered, and the underwear underneath was faintly discernible. However, if she turned around and directly lifted up her skirt for you to see, then wait, it seemed more existing. Forget it, that was not the point. Mike sighed and looked up. He did not know if he could still register with so many people in front of him. However, just as Mike was extremely worried, there was a commotion in front of him. What's going on? Why can't I register? F***CK. Why is this NPC in charge of registration ignoring me? Me too, what happened? Hearing this commotion, Mike was stunned for a moment before he quickly reacted. His human affinity skill had worked. Because his friendliness with the human NPCs was all respect. So as long as he was nearby, those NPCs would give priority to his needs. Unless the other player's friendliness had also reached respect. Although that was obviously impossible. It had only been 3 days since the region opened. Speaking of 3 days. It seemed that Mike had to go to school tomorrow to hand in his grades. He did not know what kind of evaluation he would receive in this situation. Mike thought as he squeezed forward. Many people glared at Mike after he pushed them away. However, when they realized that the person who pushed them away was God Slayer, they did not dare to say anything. However, some stubborn people spoke up, even if you are the #1 expert in the new region, God Slayer, you still can't cut the queue. Please queue at the back. These people had obviously not tasted the cruel society and were still trapped in the ways of a school. However, Mike did not need to explain too much because others would help him explain. This student, you still don't know, right? As long as God Slayer is nearby, no one else can take over. NPCs will only talk to God Slayer first. Hearing this, the player was slightly surprised and could not help but ask, why? The player who explained shrugged, how would I know? There must be something special about God Slayer. You can ask him yourself. Of course, he won't tell you. At this point, the player stopped talking. In Second World, no one would reveal their special trump card. This would always be their secret weapon. Players could be collaborators, but they could also become competitors in the next moment. For example, in the current tournament, they were competitors. Whoever exposed their trump card to their competitors would be the dumbest person in the world. Gradually, many people noticed God Slayer nearby and stepped aside. Although it was already crowded here, they could still squeeze a little more. As long as they let God Slayer talk to the NPC, they could continue lining up. This was good for everyone. If someone refused to make way, they would probably be scolded by other players. This was human nature. Soon, Mike smoothly arrived in front of the NPC. The civil official NPC in charge of registration looked at Mike with a fawning expression and said, "Hello, Lord God Slayer. Are you also here to participate in the tournament? Honorable sir, you are actually willing to compete with these vulgar adventurers on the same stage. This is really great." This flattery made the surrounding players feel a little uncomfortable, but they did not dare to cause trouble for the NPC, so they could only swallow their anger. Mike smiled and nodded, "I'm here to participate in the tournament. Quickly sign me up." "Yes, yes, yes. Don't worry." The NPC quickly helped Mike sign up. Not only did he have a good attitude, but he was also very efficient. The treatment was simply incomparable to other players. However, none of the players dared to complain. After all, he was God Slayer. If you had the ability, then you should be as amazing as him. After signing up, Mike was sent to the players' waiting area by the civil NPCs. This was a special area. In Second World, one could not enter as one wished. They could only enter if they were sent by an NPC. When Mike entered, everyone's eyes immediately focused on him. Now, almost 99% of the people in the new region recognized the ID God Slayer. Many players' mentality had changed. Even God Slayer came. It seemed that there was no chance of winning. It would definitely be God Slayer. They could only fight for the runner-up. Whoever entered the final should just admit defeat. Mike naturally did not know what these people were thinking. He glanced around and found a familiar face. That person seemed to be avoiding Mike's gaze, but he was still discovered. "You are Sky-Splitting Sword." Chapter 87. Why was God Slayer able to receive such treatment? Was there such a huge difference between humans? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 87. Why was God Slayer able to receive such treatment? Was there such a huge difference between humans? Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. When Sky-Splitting Sword heard Mike's words, his body trembled and he hurriedly waved his hand, "No, no, no, you've got the wrong person." This scene was witnessed by the other contestants. God Slayer seemed to know this fool. As for why he was called a fool, his Sky-Splitting Sword ID was on his F*King head, yet he told Mike that he got the wrong person. Who the F*CK was he trying to fool? What surprised them even more was that God Slayer actually put on a surprised look and said, "Ah, so I got the wrong person. I'm sorry, I'm sorry." This made the other players look at them even more strangely. Could they really be idiots? The reason why Mike said so was that he found it unnecessary. Even if Mike insisted that he was Sky-Splitting Sword, what could he do? Last time, the other party chose to go offline and renege on the bet of 10,000 Federation coins. Would he fairly give Mike the money now? That was impossible. Rather than that, it was better to pretend not to know him. In any case, Sky-Splitting Sword did not pose any threat to him, and he would not affect Mike from winning the championship. Oh, no, it was to win second place. A weapon. Even a dog would not want it. So what if it was a weapon bestowed by the king? Could it be compared to the sword of Meredith? After Mike found a seat to sit down and rest, the lounge fell into a strange silence. Sky-Splitting Sword lowered his head, afraid to make any noise. Mike was simply resting with his eyes closed. The others kept darting their eyes back and forth between the two people, wanting to know what had happened between them. Anyone could tell that it was not a good thing. Such an atmosphere made the contestants who later entered the waiting room not dare to speak. The quiet and strange atmosphere continued until 10 minutes later. When all 216 participants had been gathered, the others could no longer register anymore. Of course, this did not mean that anyone could register. There were certain requirements to register. For example, the player's level had to be above level 20. If a player below this level wanted to register, the NPC would only say one thing: "Sorry, you're not strong enough. Please train a little more." Although Mike had reached level 32, there were still very few players who had reached level 20. Otherwise, it would not have taken so long for the registration process to be completed. It would only take a short while for 216 players to be gathered. Then, an NPC appeared in the lounge. Everyone's gaze finally shifted away from Mike and turned to the NPC. Commander of the Royal Guards, David. This title was self-explanatory, not to mention that he was wearing a very handsome set of armor. It was obvious that he was not an ordinary person. Obviously, this NPC must have a very high status among the human race, at least in the eyes of the players. This was because it was useless for the players to get in touch with the NPC officials. Those people would not be able to give them many benefits. However, if the players could build a good relationship with this commander of the Royal Guards and increase their friendliness, they might be able to join the Royal Guards. When that time came, the players' status would be different. Many things could be done easily, and there might even be discounts when purchasing things in shops. Whoever offended the player would be offending all of the Royal Guards. In other words, they would have a backer in the future. Many people started to get restless, wanting to build a good relationship with David. However, David did not care about them. He only said coldly, "Next, the 216 of you will take turns to enter the arena to compete. During the competition, you can spectate in the lounge. Each round, the winner will advance and the loser will lose their qualification on the spot. You only have one chance, I hope you can make good use of it." When the players heard this, they became nervous. To reach the finals and win the championship. Oh no, it was the runner-up. No one had the chance to win the championship here. If one wanted to reach the finals and win second place, one could not make a single mistake. If they made a single mistake, they might be eliminated. They could not be careless at all. Just as the players were feeling nervous, the commander of the Royal Guards, David, did not leave immediately. Instead, he walked toward Mike. This scene made the players confused. What was this NPC doing? Mike was also confused. However, this doubt did not last for long. When the commander of the Royal Guards, David, came in front of Mike, he immediately bowed and said, "Respected Lord Godslayer, the king invites you to watch the battle with him. You do not have to stay in the same room with these vulgar adventurers." Hearing these words, the other players were stunned. What do you mean by vulgar adventurer? Is this game still playable? Are all the NPCs this arrogant? Of course, the NPCs were arrogant. Although the players were unhappy, none of them dared to stand out and say anything. One could imagine the consequences if someone were to step out at this time. That person would be stabbed by the commander of the Royal Guards, David, and would be sent to the resurrection point and be stripped of his right to compete. No one could afford to offend him. NPCs were all unreasonable hooligans. When Mike heard this arrangement, he could not help but smile and said, "But I still need to participate in the competition." The commander of the Royal Guards, David, bowed politely and said, "Don't worry about this. During the competition, someone will send you to the competition stage." Hearing this answer, Mike nodded in satisfaction. As long as it did not affect his competition, it would be good to watch with the king. He might even be able to receive a hidden mission or something. "Alright, lead the way then." Following this, Mike followed David out of the lounge. The other 214 players looked at him with envy. As for the other player, it was naturally sky-splitting sword. Not having to face God Slayer made him heave a sigh of relief. The commander of the Royal Guards, David, brought Mike out of the lounge and appeared beside the king. David bowed and left, leaving the king and Mike in the VIP seats. This was the best seat in the arena, and it was specially reserved for the big shots to watch the competition. There were no players or NPC spectators within a 5 meters range. The others could only sit in the normal seats that were 5 meters away. Soon, the players who could only watch from the audience seats discovered Mike's figure. Everyone was stunned. What's going on? Why is God Slayer allowed to watch from there? Is there such a huge difference between us humans? Chapter 88. 1 second to end the battle, the unlucky commander of the Royal Guards, David. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 88. 1 second to end the battle, the unlucky commander of the Royal Guards, David. After Mike sat down, the king turned around and shot a glance. Immediately, a group of maids walked over. Each of them was as beautiful as a flower, and each of them held a plate of fruit and drinks. Seeing this scene, the players were stunned. Wasn't this difference too big? God Slayer and the king were sitting in the VIP seats. They were eating fruits and drinking beverages, and there were even beautiful women serving them. What about themselves? They were squeezed in the crowded audience seats and were surrounded by a bunch of burly men. The difference was too big. The players in the audience seats silently turned their heads away, no longer looking at Mike's situation. As long as I don't look, I won't feel hurt. Sob sob sob. Very quickly, the commander of the Royal Guards, David, walked to the center of the stage and announced, "The tournament of the City of Light will officially commence. The first group of participants will now enter the stage." Following that, 2 white lights appeared on the stage. After the white lights disappeared, the figures of the 2 players appeared in everyone's sight. When the 2 players saw each other, they immediately reacted. It seemed that the other party was their opponent for the first round. David paused for a moment, allowing some time for the contestants to react. Then, he shouted, "Let the competition begin." Then, he leaped back and jumped below the stage. The rules of the competition were very simple. If one of them admitted defeat, fell out of the stage, or was killed, then the other side would win. This was also the reason why the tournament only allowed adventurers to participate. If an NPC died, they would really die. However, players could revive. Moreover, according to the NPC's observations, there would not be any losses if adventurers were to die in the arena. In that case, the audience could watch the most exciting battle. Neither side would need to be afraid of losing. They just needed to do their best to win. When the 2 players heard the "Let the competition begin" command, they immediately rushed toward each other. A battle between melee players was that simple. Due to the large number of participants, only 1 minute was allowed for the first few rounds. Only when there was a small number of participants left would the time for each battle be longer. In order to defeat the opponent in a short period of time, or to reduce the opponent's HP. The 2 did not hold back at all. They immediately handed over their most powerful skills and began to fight. This kind of exciting battle made the NPCs very excited and thrilled. Everyone cheered loudly, cheering for the side they thought highly of. In the special seats, the king looked at the situation on the stage and asked, "God Slayer, what do you think of the two people below?" Mike stuffed a grape into his mouth as he casually said, "They're just trash. They won't be able to block a single strike from me." The king was silent. He did not say anything. Very quickly, 1 minute had passed. The winner was immediately decided based on the remainder of the two contestants' HP. The winner enjoyed the applause. Although the loser did not die, he still left the stage dejectedly. A few seconds later, the second group of contestants was teleported onto the stage. Without wasting any more time, the second round quickly began. The king asked again, "What about these two?" "Trash," Mike replied in the same simple and crude manner. The king could not help but glance at Mike, and then fell into silence again. Mike did not say anything. He felt an incoming hidden mission. As for why he was invited to the VIP seats, it was either because of his human affinity or because he had done the wheat field protection mission before. Moreover, it may be due to the fact that he had accepted the missing princess mission or that he had eliminated the bounty. In short, anything special could be the reason for triggering this hidden mission. It might even require the satisfaction of the 2 or 3 factors for the mission to be triggered. Second World was too real. It was completely unlike a normal online game that was too conventional and overly formulaic. As a 30-year-old player, Mike was not surprised by this. He was just patiently waiting for his turn and for the king's instructions. After dozens of rounds of battles, a maid stepped forward and said, "Lord God Slayer, it's your turn to participate in the next round. Please get ready." Mike nodded slightly. The king asked again, "How long do you think it will take for you to win this round?" Without thinking, Mike extended one finger. The king frowned slightly. 1 minute. Mike shook his head. The king was slightly surprised. "Can it be 10 seconds?" Mike shook his head again. The king fell silent. He looked at Mike with a slight change in expression. Mike grinned, "1 second is enough." As soon as he said that, Mike disappeared from where he was. At the same time, 2 white lights appeared on the stage. When everyone saw Mike's figure, they were all excited. This was God Slayer. A man who had completed the 100th floor of the Tower of Challenges. A man who had massacred countless NPCs and players in Hero City. A man who was extremely mysterious and powerful. What kind of wonderful battle would this man perform? Many people were already looking forward to it. Everyone admired the strong, and no one did not enjoy watching the strong fight. At this moment, the player opposite of Mike was nervous. Obviously, no one thought highly of him. Even he did not think highly of himself. He sighed and accepted the result of his defeat. He did not even raise his weapon and was ready to give up. Mike stood on the spot without any seriousness. The next moment, the commander of the Royal Guards, David, looked at the two of them and announced, "Let the match begin." The moment he said that, Mike raised his left hand. The sword of Meredith in his hand immediately transformed into the staff of Meredith. A small fireball was shot directly toward the center of the arena. Following which, a huge wave of fire exploded. A strong heatwave swept through the entire arena like a tsunami. All the players in the audience seats felt as if they were in the center of a volcano. The intense burning sensation made them feel as if their bodies were soaked through. If it were not for the fact that this was the audience seat of the arena, and was a safe zone. Just this small fireball alone could probably take the lives of everyone present. The flames gradually dispersed, leaving only Mike on the stage. The entire arena fell into a period of silence, becoming quiet. Among them, the most eye-catching one was not Mike, but the commander of the Royal Guards, David, who was lying outside the stage. Although he immediately jumped back after saying, "Let the match begin." However, because Mike's attack speed was too fast. So, David seemed to have been affected by the attack just now. The magnificent commander of the royal guards actually fell to the ground because of the aftershock of an adventurer's attack. This god slayer was too terrifying. Chapter 89. Mike appeared once again, his opponent immediately forfeited. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 89. Mike appeared once again, his opponent immediately forfeited. Instantly, a white light flashed. Mike once again returned to the VIP seats. He sat down next to the king and casually ate the grapes on his plate. The audience erupted into a tsunami of cheers. Everyone was impressed by the strength that Mike had displayed. Powerful, too powerful. The king looked at Mike in surprise. As someone who could be the king, he had to have good control over his emotions. However, this time, he really could not conceal his emotions. God Slayer could casually use such a powerful attack. Even David was injured. No, not injured. He was only affected by the aftershock of the attack. He actually fell to the ground and could not get up. However, the king was not worried about David's safety. As the commander of the royal guards, the king had naturally given him some benefits. For example, David's armor was given by the king. It was an armor that could block magic attacks. However, David, who was lying on the ground, was naked. Because the armor had completely shattered. It was only the aftermath of an attack, but it actually shattered the armor that was worth thousands of gold coins. One could imagine how powerful the attack was. At this time, David had already been carried away by the medical staff for treatment. The referee was changed to the deputy commander of the royal guards, Lucius. The competition continued. In the VIP seats. The king took a deep breath to calm himself and said, God Slayer, you are indeed very strong. If you are willing, I can give you a good position. What do you think? Sure enough. Just as Mike had thought. There must be a reason for this martial arts competition. It could not just be for the residents of the City of Light to enjoy themselves. It seemed that the king wanted to recruit some strong people for his use. As for why he suddenly wanted to recruit strong people, there must be a reason. It was just that this reason had not come to light. Mike did not agree immediately. Instead, he asked, what position and what benefits? If it was any other player, saying such words would have angered the king. It might even lower their friendliness with the king. However, Mike did not have to worry about this. He had already reached the friendliness of respect among the humans. If one had to give an example. In the eyes of normal human NPCs, their friendliness toward the king was only respect. Only God could achieve fanatical faith friendliness from the human NPCs. Of course, if players had the opportunity, they could also reach fanatical faith. However, the friendliness toward the king was limited to respect. Hence, in the eyes of the king, Mike was on equal footing with him. Moreover, the king himself was extremely respectful of Mike. It was just that due to his status as the king, he needed to put on an act. Previously, the king was very curious about what this adventurer had done to obtain such a high bounty. No, or rather, how strong he was to be able to obtain such a high bounty. That was a total of 200,000 gold coins. Now he finally understood. It was not that God Slayer's strength was worth 200,000 gold coins. It was that he had only committed a sin worth 200,000 gold coins. If he wanted to, 2 million. No, perhaps even 20 million gold coins were achievable. Terrifying. This was the king's evaluation of God Slayer. Facing Mike's question, the king thought for a moment and replied, the exact official position given to you will depend on your performance in this martial arts competition. Hearing this answer, Mike frowned slightly, feeling a little unhappy. Because he had already decided that he only wanted to get second place and get the reward of the skill book. He had no intention of obtaining the first place reward, which was a weapon. However, the attitude of the king now conflicted with his plan. If he did not win the championship, it seemed that he would not get the best position. In consequence, Mike had to make a decision. After thinking for a while, Mike decided to wait until the time came. Anyway, he couldn't come up with an answer now. Soon, the first round of the match was over. Half of the 216 players were eliminated in less than an hour. After all, not every match took a minute. In this kind of competition, most of the matches ended quickly. After all, the two contestants would want to reduce each other's HP as fast as possible. After a short 5-minute break, the second round of the match began. It was still a 1-on-point-1 match, and the time limit was still 1 minute. After all, there were still 108 people left. It would take a total of 54 minutes if all players played a full minute. Although most of them would not last for a full minute, in order to prevent the match from lasting too long and reduce the viewing quality, the time limit was still necessary. After 10 minutes, it was Mike's turn to play again. The moment Mike appeared, the audience erupted into a tsunami of cheers once again. They really wanted to see Mike's wonderful performance again. However, two people trembled when they saw Mike's appearance. One of them was naturally Mike's opponent in this round. Meeting Mike was no different from declaring defeat. The other one was the deputy commander of the Royal Guards, Lucius. When Lucius saw Mike, he immediately thought of what had happened to David. His armor was not as good as David's. If he was the one who took that blow, he would have lost his life. Thinking of this, he immediately took a few steps back and came to the edge of the arena. To ensure that he could retreat out of the arena at the first possible moment so that he could at least keep his life. However, just as Lucius's body tensed up and was ready to jump out of the arena right after he said, "Let the match begin," Mike's opponent raised his hand and took the initiative to shout, "I forfeit." This situation came too suddenly, and everyone was stunned. Following which, there were loud boos and curses. F***ck, you loser. You adventurers won't really die, why don't you fight? Trash, trash, loser. Facing such curses, that player trembled, but he tried his best to endure it. Logically speaking, even if he met a strong opponent, there was no reason for him to forfeit. After all, he could resurrect after he died, and dying in the arena would not deduct EXP. However, this was only under normal circumstances. Coincidentally, the person who fought Mike was a friend of his. Moreover, his friend had just told him an incomprehensible situation. After being killed by Mike, he actually decreased by 1 level. Chapter 90. The Confident Silver Shield, Cheers in the Arena. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 90. The Confident Silver Shield, Cheers in the Arena. Mike himself did not know about this. Only the player who had forfeited and the player who had been killed by Mike in the previous round knew about it. Under normal circumstances, death would only result in a loss of 10% of EXP. Moreover, death in the arena should not lead to the loss of EXP at all. However, he had lost EXP. Furthermore, he decreased by 1 level. Just this reason was enough to make him forfeit. He knew that he could not win, but if he died, he would lose 1 level. Who would want to bear such a loss? The player left the arena dejectedly and heaved a sigh of relief. Mike, on the other hand, was not affected. He felt that it was normal for anyone to forfeit. The next moment, Mike was teleported back to the special seats to continue watching the match. It seems that your opponent is afraid. The king commented with a hint of disdain in his tone. In his opinion, even if it was a situation where he was bound to lose, since there was no loss, he should still give it a try. Mike, on the other hand, answered very calmly, "I can be considered somewhat famous among the adventurers." The king did not speak, his gaze remained on the arena. However, he could understand some things from this sentence. It seemed that all the adventurers knew what he had done. The king narrowed his eyes as if he had a plan in mind. Meanwhile, Mike continued to eat grapes leisurely. The second round of the competition soon ended. It only took 20 minutes. Only 54 people were left from the original 216 people. It seemed that Mike's opponent's behavior in the second round had affected everyone. In the next few rounds, Mike's opponents all forfeited. Mike himself was also willing to see this. He did not want to waste time teleporting to and fro the stage. Since he was going to win anyway, it would be better to win effortlessly. Soon, there were only 4 contestants left. Each match was extended to 30 minutes. After all, including the finals, there were only 3 matches left. It could be said that these 3 matches would be the 3 most valuable matches in this tournament. The longer the time, the more strategies the participants could consider. This could also increase the enjoyment of the spectators. Mike was drawn to be in the first round of the competition. After being teleported to the stage, Mike did not even take out his weapon. After all, the opponent would most likely forfeit. However, this time, it was not like before. Mike's opponent this time was a knight. His ID was Silver Shield. Unlike the other players, Silver Shield did not surrender. He looked at Mike up and down, and his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Obviously, he wanted to fight. Mike naturally saw it and immediately took out his weapon. Similarly, Mike still chose the staff form. In a place like the arena, the staff of Meredith was definitely the best choice. Because the small fireballs in the staff form and the wind blow could create an area of effect attack. Looking at the range of the fireballs that Mike fired. Not to mention this stage. Even this arena could be completely covered. In other words, the opponent had no room for dodging. Mike had previously used this move. So logically speaking, there was no reason for this knight called Silver Shield to now know of his move. Moreover, the reason why he had not surrendered was probably because he had some kind of skill that could counter this move. For example, invincibility or a shield that resisted spells. In truth, that was indeed the case. Silver Shield only dared to challenge Mike because he had a skill that resisted spells. In his opinion, Mike only had a skill with a large area of effect and high damage. This kind of ridiculous skill usually had a long cooldown. After using it once, it would take a long time to cast it again. Moreover, the shield in his hand was not an ordinary one. It was a purple excellent quality shield. It had a special skill. Magic Shield. Creates a magic shield that can block the next magic attack. Lasts for 3 seconds. Cooldown time. 60 seconds. This was what he relied on. As long as he had this shield, he would definitely win. The cooldown time of God Slayer's wide-range magic attack was definitely more than 1 minute. No, it might even be more than 10 minutes. As long as he activated Magic Shield the moment God Slayer cast his skill, and then take this opportunity to close the distance to fight in close combat, victory would be his. Thinking of this, Silver Shield revealed a confident smile. At this moment, the referee, who was the deputy commander of the Royal Guards, Lucius, saw that Silver Shield did not intend to surrender and immediately revealed an unhappy look. "You adventurers are not afraid of death, but please don't harm me, okay? If I'm not careful, I might very well die on the spot." Although he was 1,000 times unwilling, the king was still watching the match. If he retreated, he might not be able to keep his position as the deputy commander. He had no choice but to bite the bullet and act as the referee. He immediately retreated to the edge of the arena and used the tip of his feet to step on the arena to maintain his posture. His heels were directly suspended outside the arena. The moment he shouted, "Let the match begin," he would immediately retreat to avoid being affected by Mike's terrifying move. After making all the necessary preparations, the deputy commander of the Royal Guards, Lucius, took a deep breath, his body tensed up as he shouted, "Let the match begin." As soon as those words left his mouth, he immediately retreated. Sure enough, the next moment, a huge and hot wave of heat assaulted his face. The moment he announced the start of the match, Mike instantly released a small fireball. Looking at the raging flames on the arena, Lucius had no doubt that if he was even 0.1 seconds slower, he would probably be cooked by the flames. At least 90% cooked. At this moment, everyone in the arena was fully focused on the situation on the stage. They did not even dare to blink their eyes, afraid that they would miss this scene. The flames gradually dissipated. When everyone thought that Silver Shield should have been killed by the move, a shocking scene appeared. Silver Shield was unharmed. Moreover, he was running madly toward God Slayer. In an instant, the entire arena was boiling. Everyone was cheering excitedly for Silver Shield. People worshipped the strong, but they liked to see a weak person defeat the strong. In their opinion, Silver Shield was a very weak person. However, he was about to kill God Slayer and become a real God Slayer. Silver Shield looked at God Slayer, who was getting closer and closer to him, and could not help but laughed wildly. "You can't use that attack just now, right?" "I'm sorry, God Slayer." Though in the next moment, the God was angered. Mike smiled slightly, raised the staff of Meredith in his hand, and shot out a fireball. The heat swept through the crowd again. The cheering stopped abruptly.